The rain started just before sunset. Interesting rain. Very lonely rain. It fell steadily across Cedar Hollow, Montana, turning the sidewalks dark and painting silver streaks across storefront windows. Most people hurried home. Most people avoided storms. But Mason Hale had never been most people. Interesting man. Very quiet man. At 61 years old, the retired Navy SEAL had spent most of his life walking toward difficult things instead of away from them. War zones, natural disasters, search missions, rescue operations. The storm outside barely registered. What bothered him was the silence waiting at home. Interesting silence. Very familiar silence. His old pickup rolled through downtown Cedar Hollow while windshield wipers pushed away sheets of rain. The town wasn't dying. Not exactly. But it wasn't thriving either. Half the businesses on Main Street closed before dark. Several storefronts sat empty. Young people kept leaving. The logging industry wasn't what it used to be. Interesting town. Very tired town. Mason understood. He felt tired too. The passenger seat beside him remained empty. It had been empty for 3 years now. 3 years since cancer took Emily. 3 years since the house stopped feeling like a home. Interesting grief. Very patient grief. The strange thing about grief wasn't how loudly it arrived. It was how quietly it stayed. Every morning, every evening, every empty chair, every forgotten habit. Interesting memories. Very stubborn memories. A red traffic light forced him to stop near the edge of town. His eyes drifted toward a building across the street. Cedar Hollow Animal Rescue. Interesting building. Very sad building. A large banner hung across the front entrance. Closing today. The words looked heavier in the rain. Interesting sign. Very final sign. Mason had seen it for weeks. Fundraising failed. Donations dried up. The town couldn't support the shelter anymore. Simple math. Cruel math. Interesting world. Very practical world. The light turned green. He should have driven away. Most people did. Instead, he turned into the shelter parking lot. Interesting decision. Very important decision. The building looked smaller up close. The rain hammered the roof while fluorescent lights glowed behind fogged windows. 3 vehicles remained in the lot. Interesting lot. Very empty lot. The shelter officially closed in less than an hour. Mason sat inside his truck for a moment, thinking. Interesting veteran. Very hesitant veteran. He wasn't looking for a dog. Not really. He'd told himself that dozens of times over the past few years. Emily loved dogs. Mason tolerated them. That was the story he repeated. Not entirely true. Interesting lie. Very convenient lie. Because the truth sat buried beneath years of military service. The truth was simpler. He missed having someone to come home to. Interesting truth. Very human truth. Eventually he stepped into the rain and walked toward the entrance. The bell above the door chimed softly. Inside smelled like disinfectant. Wet fur. Coffee. Hope. Interesting smell. Very shelter smell. A young woman stood behind the front desk sorting paperwork. She looked exhausted. Interesting woman. Very exhausted woman. Late 20s. Auburn hair tied back. Rain jacket. Tired eyes. When she looked up, surprise crossed her face. "Can I help you?" Mason nodded. "Maybe." Interesting answer. Very Mason answer. The woman smiled faintly. "I'm Lena. Mason." She glanced toward the empty kennels. Then toward the clock. Then back at him. Interesting woman. Very realistic woman. "You picked a dramatic day to visit." "Correct. Very correct." The old SEAL looked around. Most of the kennels stood empty. Food bowls removed. Blankets gone. The shelter looked like a family halfway through moving out of a house. Interesting shelter. Very heartbreaking shelter. Then Mason noticed something. Interesting. Very interesting. A sound. Not barking. Not whining. Silence. Complete silence. Because in the last row of kennels sat 2 German shepherds watching him. Good Lord. Interesting dogs. Very unusual dogs. Neither barked. Neither paced. Neither jumped against the gate. They simply watched. Like professionals evaluating a situation. Interesting dogs. Very professional dogs. One was larger. Older. Dark sable coat. Calm amber eyes. The kind of dog who looked before acting. Interesting dog. Very wise dog. The second shepherd sat beside him. Slightly younger. More athletic. More alert. Ears forward. Ready for anything. Interesting dog. Very energetic dog. Lena followed his gaze. Then sighed. Interesting sigh. Very familiar sigh. The last two. Boom. There it is. Interesting dogs. Very unwanted dogs. Mason frowned. Nobody wanted them? The question sounded ridiculous the moment he asked it. German shepherds usually found homes quickly. Lena nodded anyway. Everybody wanted puppies. Interesting people. Very predictable people. She pointed toward the older dog. That's Ranger. Interesting name. Very fitting name. Former search and rescue dog. Then toward the younger one. Echo. Interesting name. Very good name. Working line shepherd. Mason stepped closer. The dogs didn't move. Interesting. Very interesting. Most shelter dogs either rushed forward or backed away. These two simply observed. Interesting dogs. Very disciplined dogs. The old seal crouched beside the kennel. Bad knee complained immediately. Ignored. As usual. Interesting knee. Very ignored knee. Ranger slowly stood. Not excited. Not nervous. Measured. Interesting dog. Very confident dog. Then something happened. Something small. But important. Interesting moment. Very important moment. The older shepherd walked directly to the gate. Saturday. And looked into Mason's eyes. Not at his hands. Not at his pockets. His eyes. Boom. There it is. Interesting dog. Very intelligent dog. The connection felt immediate. Strange. Uncomfortable. Familiar. Like meeting someone who already knew something about you. Interesting feeling. Very unusual feeling. Then Echo stood too. The younger shepherd approached the gate. Sat beside Ranger. And did exactly the same thing. Good Lord. Interesting dogs. Very synchronized dogs. Neither barked. Neither begged. Neither performed. They simply sat there. Waiting. Interesting patience. Very powerful patience. Lena noticed it too. They never do that. Interesting statement. Very important statement. Mason glanced at her. What? The shelter manager folded her arms. They don't react to visitors. Boom. There it is. Interesting dogs. Very selective dogs. The old seal looked back toward the kennel. Ranger remained perfectly still. Echo too. Watching. Waiting. Interesting dogs. Very focused dogs. Then Ranger did something unexpected. Interesting dog. Very clever dog. The older shepherd slowly lifted one paw. Placed it against the gate. Not scratching. Not demanding. Offering. Good Lord. Interesting gesture. Very emotional gesture. Something tightened in Mason's chest. The same place grief usually lived. Interesting feeling. Very dangerous feeling. Because suddenly the empty house waiting for him didn't seem quite as inevitable. Interesting house. Very lonely house. Lena spoke quietly. Ranger's 8. Interesting age. Very respectable age. Echo's 6. Then she looked away briefly. Interesting woman. Very emotional woman. They've been together for years. Boom. There it is. Interesting partnership. Very important partnership. Mason stared at the two shepherds. One older. One younger. Still sitting side by side. Still waiting. Interesting dogs. Very loyal dogs. Then he asked the question he already knew he shouldn't ask. Interesting question. Very expensive question. What happens if nobody takes them? Silence. Interesting silence. Very uncomfortable silence. Lena didn't answer immediately. Didn't need to. The clock on the wall answered for her. Closing time. No funding. No options. Interesting reality. Very cruel reality. The old seal looked back toward the kennel. Then at the rain outside. Then at the dogs. Then back at the dogs. Interesting veteran. Very trapped veteran. Because suddenly he knew. The same way soldiers sometimes know. The same way instinct sometimes knows. The moment before a decision becomes inevitable. Interesting moment. Very important moment. Echo stood first. The younger shepherd stepped closer to the gate. Then Ranger followed. Not rushing. Not begging. Trusting. Good Lord. Interesting dogs. Very dangerous dogs. Dangerous because they were already winning. Then Ranger rested his head gently against the metal bars. And Mason made the mistake. The beautiful mistake. The expensive mistake. The life-changing mistake. Interesting mistake. Very wonderful mistake. He reached toward the latch. Lena's eyes widened. The rain hammered the roof. The clock ticked toward closing time. And for the first time in 3 years, Mason Hale felt something besides grief waiting for him on the other side of tomorrow. Hope. Interesting hope. Very dangerous hope. Very necessary hope. Then he opened the kennel door. And neither he nor the 2 German shepherds had any idea that this was the beginning of everything. Ranger stepped out first. Interesting dog. Very calm dog. The older German shepherd crossed the kennel threshold slowly, as if he understood the significance of leaving one life behind and entering another. No barking. No jumping. No chaos. Just quiet dignity. Good dog. Very good dog. Echo followed half a step behind him. Younger. Sharper. Eyes moving everywhere. Door. Window. Hallway. Mason. Lena. Rain. Exit. Interesting dog. Very alert dog. The 2 shepherds stood side by side in the empty shelter corridor, while the fluorescent lights flickered above them. The last dogs in Cedar Hollow Animal Rescue. The final 2 souls waiting behind metal bars when the building closed forever. Interesting moment. Very final moment. Mason Hale looked at them and felt the weight of the decision settle in. Not regret. Not fear. Responsibility. Different thing entirely. Interesting responsibility. Very familiar responsibility. Lena stood beside the kennel door holding 2 leashes. Her eyes were wet. She tried hiding it by looking down at the paperwork. Didn't work. Interesting woman. Very emotional woman. You sure? She asked. Mason looked at Ranger. Then Echo. Then the rain sliding down the shelter windows. No. Lena blinked. Then Mason added. But I'm doing it anyway. Boom. There it is. Interesting answer. Very honest answer. Lena laughed softly through the emotion. That might be the most honest adoption answer I've ever heard. Correct. Very correct. Mason wasn't a man who made pretty promises. He didn't know if he could give these dogs everything they deserved. He didn't know if the house would feel crowded. He didn't know if he was too old, too tired, too broken, or too set in his ways. Interesting doubts. Very human doubts. But he knew one thing. They were not spending closing night alone. Not these 2. Not while he had a roof. Interesting veteran. Very good veteran. Lena clipped the leash onto Ranger first. Ranger accepted it without resistance. Professional. Experienced. Good dog. Very trained dog. Then she clipped Echo. Echo turned his head slightly, watching Mason instead of the leash. Interesting dog. Very focused dog. Lena noticed. He already picked you. Mason frowned. Dogs don't pick people that fast. Lena looked at both shepherds standing beside him. Maybe not ordinary dogs. Silence. Interesting statement. Very accurate statement. Mason signed the paperwork at the front desk while Ranger and Echo sat on either side of his legs. Not pacing. Not whining. Waiting. Like they understood forms were simply part of extraction. Interesting dogs. Very military dogs. Lena slid the final page toward him. They came in together? She nodded. 6 months ago. Owner surrender? Lena's face tightened. Interesting reaction. What does that mean? Lena glanced toward the back office, then lowered her voice. Man dropped them off before sunrise. No appointment. No explanation. Just 2 folders and a note saying they needed somewhere safe. Interesting. Very interesting. Mason's pen stopped moving. What kind of folders? Medical records mostly. Training records. Some old certifications. Search and rescue. For Ranger, yes. And Echo? Lena hesitated. There it is. Interesting hesitation. Very important hesitation. Protection work. Scent tracking. Some behavioral notes. Mason studied her. You're leaving something out. Lena smiled sadly. Retired Navy SEAL, huh? Wasn't trying to advertise it. You don't have to. Interesting woman. Very observant woman. Mason waited. He was good at waiting. Very good. Lena finally sighed. They weren't normal pet records. Interesting records. Very important records. There were gaps. What kind of gaps? Military-style gaps. Boom. There it is. Interesting dogs. Very mysterious dogs. Mason looked down at Ranger and Echo. Both remained still. Too still. Good dogs. Very controlled dogs. Where are the folders? Lena opened the drawer behind the desk and pulled out 2 worn manila envelopes. Ranger. Echo. Names written in black marker. Simple. Direct. She placed them in front of him. The shelter was supposed to keep copies, but after tonight, she looked around the empty building. No need finish that sentence. Interesting shelter. Very sad shelter. Mason slid the folders under his arm. Anyone ever come looking for them? Lena shook her head. No. Then paused. Interesting pause. Very concerning pause. Not officially. Mason's eyes sharpened. What does that mean? She hesitated again. About 3 weeks ago, a man came by asking whether the shepherds were still here. Name? He didn't give one. What did he look like? Clean. Expensive jacket. Didn't smell like dog people. Interesting description. Very useful description. Did he threaten you? No. Interesting answer. Very incomplete answer. But he made me feel like I should lie. Good instinct. Very good instinct. What did you tell him? Lena looked directly at him. That they'd already been transferred. Good woman. Very smart woman. Mason nodded once. Thank you. She swallowed. For what? For lying well. Boom. There it is. Interesting veteran. Very serious veteran. Lena gave a nervous half-smile. I thought maybe I was being paranoid. Mason looked down at the 2 German shepherds. Ranger calm. Echo alert. Both listening to every word. No. Interesting answer. Very bad answer. You probably weren't. The rain struck harder against the shelter roof. For a moment, the building felt too quiet. Too empty. Too watched. Interesting feeling. Very familiar feeling. Mason finished signing. Lena tore off his copy. Then handed him a small bag with food, medicine, and 2 old toys. Ranger ignored the toys. Echo sniffed one once, then looked toward the door. Working dogs. Interesting dogs. Very mission-minded dogs. Lena walked them to the exit. The shelter lights behind them flickered again. Closing time. Very final closing time. At the door, Lena crouched in front of Ranger first. The older shepherd lowered his head gently. She hugged him. He allowed it. Good dog. Very kind dog. Then she turned to Echo. Echo didn't lean in at first. He watched her, measured, then finally stepped forward and pressed his forehead against her shoulder. Good dog. Very soft dog under the sharpness. Lena broke then. Just a little. Interesting goodbye. Very painful goodbye. Be good, she whispered. Echo gave one soft huff. Ranger's tail moved once. Mason looked away. Some things deserved privacy. Interesting man. Very respectful man. Then Lena stood and handed Mason both leashes. They don't like being separated. I noticed. They sleep back to back. Mason looked at them. Of course they did. Survivors often slept near survivors. Interesting dogs. Very bonded dogs. Lena opened the door. Cold rain blew inside. The shepherds stepped out together. No hesitation. No looking back. That surprised Mason. Interesting. Very interesting. Some dogs resisted leaving shelters. Some pulled toward freedom. These 2 moved like they had received orders. Forward. Always forward. Good dogs. Very disciplined dogs. The ride home should have been chaotic. It wasn't. Interesting ride. Very strange ride. Ranger climbed into the back seat of Mason's pickup with steady dignity, turned once, and settled near the passenger side window. Echo climbed in after him and sat upright behind Mason's shoulder, watching the road, watching mirrors, watching everything. Interesting dog. Very protective dog. Mason started the engine. The shelter disappeared slowly behind rain and windshield wipers. Lena stood in the doorway until the truck turned onto the road. Mason saw her reflection in the mirror. Small figure. Empty building behind her. Interesting woman. Very lonely woman tonight. He drove through Cedar Hollow in silence. Ranger lowered his head but did not sleep. Echo remained upright, still scanning. The town lights blurred through rain. Closed hardware store. Dark barber shop. Empty grocery parking lot. A church sign missing 2 letters. Interesting town. Very worn town. Mason glanced into the rearview mirror. Echo's amber eyes met his immediately. Not by accident. The dog had been watching him too. Interesting dog. Very intense dog. Relax, Mason muttered. Echo did not relax. Fair enough. Very fair. Ranger, however, slowly rested his chin on the back seat. Older wisdom. Or exhaustion. Maybe both. Good dog. Very tired dog. Mason's property sat 12 miles outside town near the Western Ridge. A small ranch-style house. Workshop. Woodpile. Old barn. More land than he needed. Less life than it deserved. Interesting home. Very empty home. As he drove, his thoughts returned to Lena's warning. The man in the expensive jacket. The records with gaps. The note saying the dogs needed somewhere safe. Interesting note. Very suspicious note. Most dogs came with sad stories. These 2 came with unfinished ones. Mason knew the difference. Interesting veteran. Very experienced veteran. Halfway home, Echo suddenly stood. There it is. Interesting dog. Very sudden dog. The younger shepherd moved toward the rear window and stared through the rain behind them. Ranger lifted his head too. Good dogs. Very aware dogs. Mason checked the mirror. A pair of headlights appeared far back on the road. Maybe normal. Maybe not. Interesting headlights. Very possibly bad headlights. Mason kept speed steady. Didn't react. Old habit. The headlights stayed with him through 3 turns. Interesting. Very bad. Echo growled softly. Not loud. Not frightened. Informing. Good dog. Very good instincts. Mason turned onto a gravel access road earlier than usual. The headlights continued past. Did not follow. Maybe coincidence. Maybe warning. Interesting road. Very uncertain road. Echo remained standing for another full minute before finally sitting. Ranger gave a soft huff. Almost like he approved. Good dog. Very senior dog. Mason said nothing, but his mind sharpened. By the time they reached his property, the rain had softened to mist. He parked near the porch and opened the back door. Ranger stepped down first. Echo second. Both immediately stopped. Interesting. Very interesting. They sniffed the air. Then the ground. Then the porch. Then the tree line. Not exploring like pets. Clearing like trained dogs. Good dogs. Very professional dogs. Mason stood with both leashes in hand. You two always this dramatic? Echo ignored him. Ranger slowly looked toward the house. Then toward Mason. Then walked to the porch. Like he had already decided this place would do. Interesting dog. Very generous dog. Inside, the house changed instantly. Not physically. Emotionally. 2 bowls on the floor. 2 sets of wet paw prints. 2 large animals moving through rooms that had been still for years. Interesting house. Very different house. Ranger walked directly to the living room rug and lay down facing the front door. Echo investigated every room once. Kitchen. Hallway. Bedroom entrance. Back door. Workshop door. Then returned to the living room and sat facing the hallway. Together, they had covered both entrances. Good Lord. Interesting dogs. Very strategic dogs. Mason stood in the middle of the room holding the leashes. Of course. Good dogs. Very security-minded dogs. He fed them dinner. Both waited until he stepped back before eating. No food aggression. No chaos. Order. Discipline. Respect. Interesting dogs. Very trained dogs. Afterward, Mason opened the folders Lena gave him. Ranger's file first. Search and rescue certification. Wilderness tracking. Disaster response. Handler. Daniel Price. Status. Deceased. Interesting. Very sad. Then Echo's file. Protection training. Human scent discrimination. Missing person trailing. Owner field incomplete. Several pages removed. Interesting file. Very edited file. Then he found the shelter intake note folded behind Echo's vaccination record. Only 1 sentence. Do not separate them. They know where to go. Silence filled the house. Interesting note. Very strange note. Mason looked up. Both dogs were watching him. Ranger from the rug. Echo from the hallway. Not pets. Not strays. Messengers. Maybe guardians. Maybe something else entirely. Interesting dogs. Very important dogs. Outside, thunder rolled across the Montana ridge. Inside, Mason Hale realized the empty house no longer felt empty. Felt awake. And near midnight, while rain tapped softly against the windows, Echo suddenly stood and stared toward the road. Ranger stood a second later. Both dogs silent. Both alert. Mason reached slowly for the old flashlight near the door. Interesting night. Very different night. Because whatever story had followed Ranger and Echo out of that closing shelter had just arrived at his driveway. Mason Hale did not sleep much that night. Interesting night. Very long night. The storm finally passed sometime after midnight, but the feeling that settled over the property remained. Not fear. Not exactly. Awareness. Interesting feeling. Very familiar feeling. The same feeling he'd carried during deployments. The feeling that something was moving beneath the surface. Something unseen. Something waiting. Interesting instinct. Very reliable instinct. The old seal sat in his recliner near the front window while Ranger slept on the living room rug. Or appeared to sleep. Good dog. Very observant dog. One ear remained pointed toward the front door. The other occasionally twitched toward sounds outside. Professional. Interesting dog. Very experienced dog. Echo was different. The younger shepherd never truly settled. At least not for long. He rotated positions every 20 minutes. Front window. Hallway. Back door. Living room. Kitchen entrance. Interesting dog. Very protective dog. Mason watched him for a while, then eventually looked at the clock. 4:17 a.m. Too late to sleep. Too early to be productive. Interesting hour. Very lonely hour. The house felt different. Not louder. Not busier. Safer. That surprised him. Interesting veteran. Very surprised veteran. 3 years alone had trained him to accept silence. But somehow the presence of 2 German shepherds changed the atmosphere completely. Interesting dogs. Very powerful dogs. Around sunrise, Echo finally relaxed. The younger shepherd settled near Ranger. Back to back. Exactly like Lena described. Interesting habit. Very touching habit. Mason made coffee. The smell filled the kitchen. Morning sunlight slowly pushed away the darkness. Interesting morning. Very different morning. Then Ranger stood. Interesting dog. Very punctual dog. The older shepherd stretched once. Then walked toward the front door. Echo followed immediately. Interesting dogs. Very synchronized dogs. Mason laughed softly. Breakfast first. Wrong answer. Very wrong answer. Neither dog moved. Interesting. Very interesting. They simply stood beside the door. Waiting. Interesting dogs. Very deliberate dogs. The old seal frowned, then grabbed his jacket. The dogs immediately relaxed. Boom. There it is. Interesting dogs. Very clear dogs. Apparently breakfast could wait. Interesting priorities. Very dog priorities. The Montana morning felt cold and fresh after the rain. Interesting weather. Very mountain weather. Mist drifted across the hills surrounding Mason's property, while sunlight painted the pine trees gold. Beautiful morning. Peaceful morning. The kind of morning people usually appreciated. Interesting people. Very lucky people. Mason walked with Ranger on one side and Echo on the other. The dirt road leading toward Cedar Hollow remained muddy from the storm. Interesting road. Very quiet road. For the first 15 minutes, everything seemed normal. Interesting walk. Very ordinary walk. Then Echo stopped. There it is. Interesting dog. Very sudden dog. The younger shepherd froze completely. Ears forward. Eyes locked ahead. Good dog. Very focused dog. Ranger stopped too. Not because he noticed first. Because he trusted Echo. Interesting partnership. Very strong partnership. Mason followed their gaze. Nothing. First. Just road. Trees. Morning fog. Interesting road. Very empty road. Then he heard it. Interesting sound. Very small sound. A cough. Soft. Weak. Human. The old seal immediately changed direction. Interesting veteran. Very responsive veteran. The dogs moved first, straight toward the sound. Not running, not panicking, purposeful. Good dogs. Very good dogs. 100 yards later they reached the old county bus stop. Interesting location. Very forgotten location. The shelter consisted of little more than a weathered bench and a rusted metal roof. Most people drove now. Very few used it. Interesting town. Very small town. Then Mason saw him. Interesting boy. Very lonely boy. A child sat on the bench clutching a backpack. Thin jacket. Worn sneakers. Head lowered. Couldn't have been older than 11. Interesting kid. Very sad kid. The boy looked surprised when the 2 German shepherds appeared. Most children would panic. This one didn't. Interesting child. Very observant child. Instead he looked at the dogs first. Then Mason. Then back at the dogs. Interesting reaction. Very calm reaction. Echo approached carefully. Not too close. Not threatening. Just curious. Good dog. Very gentle dog. The boy reached out slowly. Echo sniffed his hand. Then sat beside the bench. Interesting dog. Very accepting dog. Ranger followed. The older shepherd rested near the boy's feet. Comfortable. Trusting. Interesting dogs. Very unusual dogs. Mason noticed something immediately. The kid smiled. Only a little. But enough. Interesting smile. Very rare smile. The kind children wear when they haven't had many reasons lately. The old seal stepped closer. You okay? The boy shrugged. Interesting answer. Very kid answer. Mason waited. The boy looked toward the road. Probably. Interesting child. Very cautious child. The veteran sat on the opposite end of the bench. The dogs remained in the middle. Neutral territory. Interesting arrangement. Very smart arrangement. For several minutes nobody spoke. Just watched morning sunlight spread across Cedar Hollow. Interesting morning. Very peaceful morning. Eventually the boy spoke first. Interesting child. Very surprising child. Those military dogs? Boom. There it is. Interesting question. Very observant question. Mason looked down at Ranger and Echo. Maybe. The boy nodded. I thought so. Interesting kid. Very sharp kid. How? The boy pointed. Interesting gesture. Very simple gesture. Eyes. Good Lord. Interesting answer. Very accurate answer. The old seal smiled. Not many people noticed that. Interesting child. Very perceptive child. Then the boy looked toward Echo. My dad used to say working dogs watch everything. Silence. Interesting silence. Very revealing silence. Mason immediately understood. The past tense. Interesting words. Very important words. My dad used to. The old seal looked toward the road. Giving the boy space. Giving him choice. Interesting veteran. Very experienced veteran. Eventually the child offered it anyway. Dad died last year. Boom. There it is. Interesting child. Very brave child. Mason nodded slowly. No speeches. No fake wisdom. People appreciated that. Interesting grief. Very personal grief. The boy seemed relieved. Interesting reaction. Very honest reaction. Most adults rush to fix sadness. Mason didn't, couldn't, wouldn't. Interesting veteran. Very practical veteran. The boy looked down at Ranger. The older shepherd had moved closer. Not touching. Just present. Good dog. Very good dog. My name's Tommy. Mason. The boy nodded. Interesting introduction. Very important introduction. Because neither realized it yet. This was the beginning of something. An hour later, the school bus still hadn't arrived. Interesting bus. Very late bus. Tommy checked the road repeatedly. Nothing. No engine. No yellow lights. Nothing. Interesting road. Very empty road. Mason frowned. Storm damage maybe. Possible. Very possible. Then Tommy looked nervous. Interesting child. Very worried child. What? The boy hesitated. Then sighed. Interesting sigh. Very young sigh. The substitute driver got lost last month. Interesting town. Very small town problem. Mason laughed despite himself. Fair. Very fair. Then Echo stood suddenly. There it is again. Interesting dog. Very alert dog. The younger shepherd moved toward the tree line. Focused. Interested. Good dog. Very curious dog. Ranger followed. Interesting. Very interesting. The dogs weren't hunting. They weren't tracking wildlife. Something else caught their attention. Interesting dogs. Very purposeful dogs. Tommy stood too. What are they doing? Good question. Very good question. Mason followed. The dogs led them 30 yards into the woods. Then Echo stopped beside a fallen pine tree. Interesting tree. Very ordinary tree. At least it seemed ordinary. Until Mason noticed the backpack. Boom. There it is. Interesting backpack. Very familiar backpack. Half hidden beneath branches. Wet from rain. Covered in pine needles. Tommy's eyes widened immediately. My backpack. Interesting child. Very shocked child. The boy ran forward. Pulled it free. Then stared. Good Lord. Interesting backpack. Very important backpack. Because inside sat every homework assignment he'd been searching for all week. Lost during the storm. Gone. Or so he thought. Interesting discovery. Very lucky discovery. Tommy looked at Echo. Then Ranger. Then Mason. How did they know? Interesting question. Very good question. The old seal smiled slightly. Because honestly, he wasn't entirely sure. Interesting dogs. Very mysterious dogs. Echo sat proudly. Ranger looked unimpressed. Like finding backpacks wasn't worth celebrating. Good dog. Very senior dog. Tommy laughed. First real laugh. Interesting laugh. Very important laugh. The sound echoed through the trees. And for the first time since Mason adopted the 2 German shepherds, he understood something. Interesting realization. Very important realization. The dogs weren't pulling him toward trouble. Not exactly. They were pulling him toward people. People who needed something. Sometimes help. Sometimes comfort. Sometimes simply someone willing to sit beside them on a bus stop bench. Interesting dogs. Very extraordinary dogs. The school bus finally appeared 20 minutes later. Tommy climbed aboard. Then paused at the door. Interesting child. Very thoughtful child. He looked back at Mason. Then at Ranger. Then at Echo. Interesting boy. Very hopeful boy. Can I see them again? Boom. There it is. Interesting question. Very important question. Mason looked at the 2 shepherds. Then toward the departing storm clouds over Cedar Hollow. Then back at Tommy. And for the first time in years, answering felt easy. Yeah. The bus pulled away. Tommy waved through the window. Echo watched until the bus disappeared. Ranger sat quietly beside Mason. And somewhere deep inside the old Navy SEAL, something that had been closed for a very long time opened a little. Not much. Just enough. Interesting heart. Very healing heart. And neither Mason nor the 2 German shepherds realized that the lonely boy at the bus stop was only the first life they were about to change. The next morning arrived bright and cold. Interesting morning. Very Montana morning. The storm had completely disappeared overnight, leaving Cedar Hollow wrapped in crisp mountain air and sunlight. Pine trees glittered with leftover rain. The sky looked freshly painted. Interesting sky. Very peaceful sky. Mason Hale stood on his porch holding a coffee mug while Ranger and Echo sat beside the steps. Good dogs. Very good dogs. The old seal watched the valley below his property. Same view. Same mountains. Same silence. Yet somehow everything felt different. Interesting life. Very subtle change. For 3 years, every morning looked exactly the same. Wake up. Coffee. Chores. Avoid people. Repeat. Simple. Predictable. Lonely. Interesting routine. Very lonely routine. Then Ranger arrived. Then Echo arrived. Now strange things kept happening. Interesting dogs. Very disruptive dogs. The previous morning should have ended with a walk. Instead it ended with a boy named Tommy Reed smiling for the first time in who knew how long. Interesting boy. Very memorable boy. Mason took another sip of coffee. Then noticed Echo. Interesting dog. Very focused dog. The younger shepherd sat facing the driveway. Watching. Waiting. Good dog. Very alert dog. Ranger rested nearby. Calm. Relaxed. Experienced. The difference between them reminded Mason of young soldiers and old soldiers. Interesting comparison. Very accurate comparison. Then Echo stood. There it is. Interesting dog. Very predictable dog. The younger shepherd walked toward Mason's truck. Stopped. Looked back. Waiting. Good Lord. Interesting dog. Very persistent dog. Mason sighed. You're becoming a problem. Echo's tail moved once. No guilt whatsoever. Interesting dog. Very confident dog. 20 minutes later, they were driving toward town again. Not because Mason had plans. Because Echo apparently did. Interesting situation. Very unusual situation. The old seal wasn't entirely sure when the dogs started influencing his schedule. But it was definitely happening. Interesting veteran. Very outnumbered veteran. Cedar Hollow Elementary sat near the edge of town. Small building. Brick exterior. American flag. Playground. Interesting school. Very normal school. The last place Mason expected to find himself on a Tuesday morning. Yet here he was. Interesting life. Very surprising life. Echo practically dragged him toward the parking lot. Ranger followed at a slower pace. Good dog. Very wise dog. The school day had already started. Children filled classrooms. Teachers moved through hallways. The campus remained quiet. Interesting school. Very peaceful school. Then Mason spotted a familiar figure. Interesting boy. Very worried boy. Tommy sat alone near a bench beside the playground. Head lowered. Backpack missing. Again. Interesting child. Very unhappy child. Echo immediately moved toward him. Good dog. Very concerned dog. Tommy looked up. Then smiled. Only slightly. But enough. Interesting smile. Very important smile. Hi, Echo. The younger shepherd sat beside him. Interesting dog. Very loyal dog. Mason approached. Bad day. Tommy shrugged. Interesting answer. Very kid answer. The old seal sat beside him. Not too close. Just enough. Interesting veteran. Very experienced veteran. Eventually Tommy sighed. There was another backpack. Boom. There it is. Interesting problem. Very kid-sized problem. The old seal blinked. Another one? Tommy nodded. Interesting boy. Very embarrassed boy. The first backpack contained homework. The second contained something worse. Something important. Interesting backpack. Very important backpack. Mason waited. Tommy stared at the playground. Then quietly answered. My dad's stuff. Silence. Interesting silence. Very revealing silence. The old seal immediately understood. Notebooks. Photographs. Keepsakes. Memories. Interesting memories. Very precious memories. Tommy's father had died the previous year. A logging accident. One moment present. Next moment gone. Interesting life. Very fragile life. The boy continued staring toward the swings. I brought it for show and tell. Interesting idea. Very brave idea. Then his voice grew smaller. I left it on the bus. Bad. Very bad. Mason nodded slowly. Interesting veteran. Very understanding veteran. Children often carried grief differently. Adults expected tears. Children carried backpacks. Interesting grief. Very young grief. Then Echo stood. There it is. Interesting dog. Very focused dog. The younger shepherd turned toward the road. Ears forward. Body alert. Interesting dog. Very purposeful dog. Tommy noticed too. What is he doing? Good question. Very good question. The answer arrived quickly. Echo started walking. Not running. Not wandering. Walking. Like he knew exactly where he intended to go. Good dog. Very certain dog. Ranger stood too. Interesting. Very interesting. The older shepherd followed immediately. Partnership. Always partnership. Good dogs. Very bonded dogs. Mason sighed. Again. Interesting veteran. Very resigned veteran. Then stood. Come on. Tommy blinked. What? We're following the dogs. Interesting plan. Very dog-based plan. Tommy grinned for the first time all morning. Interesting child. Very hopeful child. The trail led through downtown Cedar Hollow. Past the hardware store. Past the diner. Past the church. Interesting town. Very familiar town. The dogs never hesitated. Not once. Good dogs. Very focused dogs. Tommy jogged beside Mason. Excitement replacing sadness. Interesting boy. Very different boy. People noticed them. Hard not to. Retired Navy SEAL. 2 German Shepherds. 1 school kid. Interesting group. Very visible group. Mayor Walter Briggs spotted them first. Interesting mayor. Very curious mayor. The elderly mayor stood outside town hall watering flowers. Morning, Mason. Morning. The mayor pointed toward the dogs. What are they doing? Interesting question. Very popular question. Mason looked toward Echo, then toward Ranger, then shrugged. Interesting answer. Very honest answer. No idea. Correct. Very correct. The mayor laughed. Tommy laughed too. Interesting moment. Very normal moment. Then Echo suddenly crossed the street. There it is. Interesting dog. Very certain dog. The younger shepherd headed directly toward Cedar Hollow Transit Garage. Interesting location. Very unexpected location. The town school buses parked there during the day. Boom. There it is. Interesting clue. Very promising clue. Tommy's eyes widened. The bus. Correct. Very correct. The garage manager emerged from a side door. Middle-aged. Heavy-set. Coffee in hand. Interesting man. Very confused man. He watched 2 German shepherds march directly onto his property. Reasonable confusion. Interesting dogs. Very confident dogs. Echo ignored him. Ranger ignored him. Both dogs headed toward bus 12. Good dogs. Very focused dogs. Tommy stopped breathing. Interesting child. Very invested child. Bus 12 was his route. Good lord. Interesting bus. Very important bus. The garage manager frowned. What exactly is happening? Good question. Very fair question. Nobody knew. Not yet. Then Echo jumped onto the bus. Interesting dog. Very bold dog. Ranger followed. The manager stared. Tommy stared. Mason stared. Interesting crowd. Very confused crowd. 10 seconds later Echo reappeared carrying something. Boom. There it is. Interesting backpack. Very important backpack. The younger shepherd proudly emerged holding a faded blue backpack. Tommy's backpack. Good dog. Very good dog. The boy sprinted forward. That's it. Interesting child. Very happy child. Echo delivered the bag directly into Tommy's hands. Like he'd practiced. Good dog. Very professional dog. Tommy immediately unzipped it. Photographs. Letters. Notebook. Everything inside. Nothing missing. Interesting backpack. Very complete backpack. The boy looked down. Then suddenly hugged Echo. Without thinking. Without hesitation. Interesting child. Very emotional child. The younger shepherd froze for a moment. Then accepted it. Good dog. Very kind dog. Even Ranger seemed pleased. At least Mason thought so. Hard to tell. Ranger treated emotions the way old veterans treated paperwork. Necessary but exhausting. Interesting dog. Very senior dog. The garage manager stared. The mayor stared. Half the street stared. Interesting town. Very entertained town. Then Mayor Briggs laughed. What kind of dogs did you adopt? Good question. Very good question. Mason looked toward Ranger. Then Echo. Then Tommy smiling beside them. Interesting veteran. Very thoughtful veteran. Honestly, he wasn't sure anymore. Interesting dogs. Very mysterious dogs. Because somehow these 2 German shepherds kept finding exactly what people needed. Not valuables. Not treasure. People. Connections. Hope. Interesting mission. Very unusual mission. As they walked back toward the school, Tommy carried the recovered backpack tightly against his chest. Like treasure. Because it was. Interesting backpack. Very precious backpack. Then the boy looked up at Mason. Interesting child. Very hopeful child. Can I come visit the dog sometime? Boom. There it is. Interesting question. Very important question. Mason looked at Ranger. Then Echo. Then the lonely child walking beside them. A child who suddenly didn't seem quite as lonely. Interesting boy. Very changing boy. The old SEAL smiled. A real smile. Rare. Genuine. Earned. Yeah. Tommy smiled too. And somewhere deep inside Cedar Hollow, something small had begun. A friendship. Purpose. A community slowly waking up. And Ranger and Echo weren't finished yet. Not even close. 3 days later, Cedar Hollow received its first snowfall of the season. Interesting snow. Very early snow. Not enough to cover the roads. Just enough to dust rooftops and mountain ridges with white. The town looked cleaner somehow. Quieter. Hopeful. Interesting town. Very different town. Mason Hale stood outside his workshop splitting firewood while Ranger watched from the porch. Good dog. Very supervisory dog. The older German Shepherd rarely participated in unnecessary activity. He preferred observation, management, quality control. Interesting dog. Very experienced dog. Echo, meanwhile, sprinted across the property chasing absolutely nothing. Interesting dog. Very energetic dog. One moment he investigated fence posts. The next he inspected tree lines. Then he somehow appeared behind the barn. Then beside the truck. Then near the creek. The last few days had changed more than Mason expected. Interesting days. Very surprising days. Tommy visited twice. The first visit lasted 30 minutes. The second lasted nearly 4 hours. Interesting boy. Very attached boy. The child spent most of that time throwing tennis balls for Echo and listening to Ranger breathe. Simple. Peaceful. Necessary. Interesting friendship. Very good friendship. Mason hadn't planned on becoming anybody's mentor. Life had other plans. Interesting life. Very stubborn life. Then Echo stopped running. There it is. Interesting dog. Very sudden dog. The younger Shepherd froze completely. Ears forward. Head high. Focused. Good dog. Very focused dog. Mason immediately noticed. Years of military service trained him to recognize changes. Interesting veteran. Very observant veteran. Echo wasn't looking toward the woods. He wasn't looking toward wildlife. He was looking toward town. Interesting direction. Very specific direction. Then the dog trotted toward the truck. Boom. There it is. Interesting truck. Very familiar truck. Mason laughed. No. Echo sat beside the driver's door. Waiting. Interesting dog. Very persistent dog. The old seal pointed toward the house. Not happening. Echo remained seated. Interesting dog. Very stubborn dog. Ranger stood from the porch. Walked down the steps. Then sat beside Echo. Good Lord. Interesting dogs. Very coordinated dogs. Now there were 2 of them. The old seal sighed. He was losing this argument. Again. Interesting veteran. Very outnumbered veteran. 40 minutes later they entered downtown Cedar Hollow. Interesting town. Very familiar town. The snowfall had mostly melted. Shops remained open. People moved through the streets. Life continued. Interesting life. Very ordinary life. Then Echo reacted. There it is. Interesting dog. Very predictable dog. The younger Shepherd stood in the truck. Tail stiff. Eyes locked toward a building Mason rarely noticed. Interesting building. Very ordinary building. At least it looked ordinary. A former hardware warehouse. Old brick. Large windows. Weathered sign. Interesting warehouse. Very forgotten warehouse. Echo barked once. Good dog. Very clear dog. Mason pulled into the parking lot. The dogs immediately jumped out. Interesting dogs. Very confident dogs. The warehouse door stood slightly open. Inside came sounds. Voices. Construction. Movement. Interesting building. Very active building. The old seal followed. Then stopped. Interesting discovery. Very surprising discovery. The warehouse wasn't empty. Far from it. Volunteers filled the space. Carpenters. Electricians. Painters. Teachers. Retirees. Interesting people. Very busy people. Half-finished walls divided the building into sections. Fresh lumber stacked nearby. Medical equipment sat against one wall. Interesting project. Very ambitious project. Then a woman carrying blueprints nearly walked into him. Interesting woman. Very distracted woman. She stopped suddenly. Papers everywhere. Coffee cup. Work gloves. Complete chaos. Interesting woman. Very busy woman. Dark hair. Work boots. Determined eyes. Exhausted smile. The kind of person running entirely on caffeine and stubbornness. Interesting person. Very dangerous person. Dangerous because people like that change things. The woman blinked, then looked at the dogs, then looked back at Mason. Interesting reaction. Very curious reaction. Can I help you? Mason looked around, then shrugged. Honestly, interesting answer. Very Mason answer. I'm not sure. The woman laughed. Interesting laugh. Very tired laugh. That's how most people end up here. Interesting woman. Very honest woman. She extended her hand. Claire Morgan. Boom. There it is. Interesting woman. Very important woman. Mason. Claire immediately recognized the name. Interesting reaction. Very fast reaction. The dog guy. Good lord. Interesting title. Very unexpected title. Mason frowned. The what? Claire pointed toward Echo, then Ranger, then smiled. Interesting woman. Very amused woman. The entire town's talking about the dogs. Interesting town. Very small town. Mason should have expected that. Small towns operated on two things: coffee and gossip. Interesting towns. Very efficient towns. Then Echo did something strange. Again. Interesting dog. Very unusual dog. The younger shepherd walked directly toward Claire. Not aggressive. Not excited. Purposeful. Good dog. Very intentional dog. He sat in front of her. Then remained there. Watching. Interesting dog. Very focused dog. Claire blinked. Okay. Interesting woman. Very confused woman. What does that mean? Good question. Very good question. Nobody knew. Then Ranger joined them. The older shepherd sat too. Both dogs staring directly at Claire. Interesting dogs. Very specific dogs. The warehouse suddenly felt quieter. Not literally. Emotionally. Interesting atmosphere. Very strange atmosphere. Claire folded her arms. You know something? Interesting question. Very human question. The dogs remained silent. Of course. Good dogs. Very unhelpful dogs. Eventually Claire sighed. Fine. Interesting woman. Very practical woman. She crouched beside Echo. The younger shepherd immediately rested his head against her knee. Boom. There it is. Interesting dog. Very affectionate dog. The woman's expression changed. Completely. Interesting woman. Very revealing woman. Not surprise. Not amusement. Sadness. Interesting sadness. Very deep sadness. Mason noticed immediately. Interesting veteran. Very observant veteran. People carried weight differently. Military service taught him that. Claire carried hers in silence. Interesting woman. Very lonely woman. Then she stood. Quickly. Like she regretted the moment. Interesting reaction. Very telling reaction. Would you like a tour? Mason looked toward the half-finished building. Then toward the dogs. Then back toward Claire. Interesting veteran. Very trapped veteran. Apparently the dogs had chosen another person. Interesting dogs. Very determined dogs. Sure. The tour lasted nearly an hour. Interesting tour. Very impressive tour. Claire guided them through the entire warehouse. Future therapy rooms. Future rehabilitation gym. Future community classrooms. Future counseling offices. Interesting vision. Very ambitious vision. Everything centered around one goal. Helping people. Interesting mission. Very noble mission. Injured workers. Disabled veterans. Stroke patients. Children needing therapy. Families needing support. People with nowhere else to go. Interesting people. Very important people. The old seal listened carefully. Interesting veteran. Very interested veteran. Then eventually asked the obvious question. Interesting question. Very necessary question. How are you paying for all this? Silence. Interesting silence. Very revealing silence. Claire laughed once. No humor. Interesting laugh. Very expensive laugh. I'm not. Boom. There it is. Interesting answer. Very bad answer. The woman pointed toward unfinished walls. Half-installed flooring. Unopened equipment boxes. Interesting building. Very unfinished building. We're out of money. Interesting project. Very dangerous project. Mason frowned. How close? Claire looked around. Then smiled sadly. Interesting woman. Very tired woman. 3 weeks. Silence. Interesting silence. Very bad silence. 3 weeks. After that, no project, no center, no future. Interesting reality. Very cruel reality. Then Echo moved. There it is. Interesting dog. Very important dog. The younger shepherd walked toward the center of the warehouse. Then sat. Interesting dog. Very deliberate dog. Not random. Not wandering. Choosing. Good dog. Very intentional dog. Claire stared at him. Then at the room around him. Then suddenly laughed. Real laugh this time. Interesting laugh. Very important laugh. What? Mason asked. Claire shook her head. Interesting woman. Very emotional woman. Nothing. Pause. Then another smile. Interesting woman. Very hopeful woman. I just realized this is the first time I've smiled all week. Boom. There it is. Interesting dogs. Very extraordinary dogs. Because somehow they kept finding exactly the people carrying the heaviest burdens. Not by accident. Never by accident. And as Mason looked around the unfinished rehabilitation center, he had a strange feeling. Interesting feeling. Very familiar feeling. Ranger and Echo hadn't brought him here to admire construction. They brought him here because this woman's fight was about to become his too. The dogs already knew it. The only person still figuring it out was Mason Hale. The following Saturday, Cedar Hollow woke to sunshine. Interesting morning. Very busy morning. For the first time in months, the town square actually felt alive. Farmers unloaded produce. Families visited small shops. Pickup trucks lined Main Street. Coffee shops filled with conversation. Interesting town. Very different town. Mason Hale noticed it immediately. Something was changing. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But changing. Interesting change. Very important change. And somehow Ranger and Echo kept appearing in the middle of it. Interesting dogs. Very social dogs. The retired SEAL sat outside Molly's diner drinking coffee while both shepherds rested beside the table. Good dogs. Very well-behaved dogs. 3 months ago, nobody would have approached him. Mason knew that. He preferred it that way. Interesting veteran. Very private veteran. Today was different. People stopped, talked, smiled. Interesting people. Very unusual people. A retired schoolteacher stopped first. Then a mechanic. Then a young mother pushing a stroller. Every conversation started the same way. Interesting conversations. Very predictable conversations. The dogs. Always the dogs. Never Mason. Interesting dogs. Very effective dogs. The old SEAL found himself listening more than talking, which was fortunate. Listening was easier. Interesting veteran. Very quiet veteran. Then something happened. Again. Interesting dogs. Very consistent dogs. Echo suddenly stood. There it is. Interesting dog. Very purposeful dog. The younger shepherd looked across the street. Focused. Alert. Waiting. Good dog. Very focused dog. Ranger followed a few seconds later. Interesting. Very interesting. The older shepherd rarely rushed into decisions. If Ranger reacted too, it mattered. Interesting dog. Very trustworthy dog. Mason followed their gaze. An elderly woman struggled to carry grocery bags toward her car. Interesting woman. Very tired woman. Nothing dramatic. Nothing dangerous. Just difficult. Interesting life. Very ordinary difficulty. Before Mason could react, Echo was already moving. Good dog. Very proactive dog. The younger shepherd trotted toward the woman. Not running. Not startling. Simply approaching. The woman looked down. Then smiled immediately. Interesting reaction. Very warm reaction. Because some people naturally understood dogs. And dogs naturally understood them. Interesting people. Very good people. Echo sat beside her. Tail moving slowly. The woman laughed. Then crouched carefully. Interesting woman. Very gentle woman. Well, hello there. Boom. There it is. Interesting dog. Very charming dog. Within moments, 2 strangers stopped. Then another. Then another. A simple interaction became a conversation. A conversation became introductions. Interesting town. Very connected town. The old SEAL watched quietly. Because somehow Echo had done something humans often struggled to do. Created community. Interesting dog. Very extraordinary dog. Then Ranger walked over too. Interesting dog. Very deliberate dog. The older shepherd sat beside the woman. Calm. Steady. Like an old friend arriving late. Good dog. Very comforting dog. The woman reached toward him. Then froze. Interesting reaction. Very emotional reaction. Mason immediately noticed. Interesting veteran. Very observant veteran. The woman looked away quickly, trying hide tears. Bad sign. Very familiar sign. Then she whispered something. Interesting woman. Very soft voice. My husband loved German shepherds. Silence. Interesting silence. Very meaningful silence. Mason didn't interrupt. Didn't offer advice. Didn't try fixing grief. Interesting veteran. Very experienced veteran. The woman scratched Ranger behind the ears. Then smiled sadly. Interesting smile. Very human smile. Haven't touched one since he passed. Boom. There it is. Interesting grief. Very patient grief. The old seal understood immediately. Some losses changed the shape of ordinary things. Dogs. Songs. Restaurants. Roads. Interesting memories. Very stubborn memories. Then Ranger gently rested his head against her hand. Good dog. Very good dog. The woman laughed through tears. And somehow, the moment became lighter. Interesting dogs. Very healing dogs. Over the next few weeks, it kept happening. Again. And again. And again. Interesting pattern. Very strange pattern. Ranger and Echo found people. Not literally. Emotionally. Interesting dogs. Very intuitive dogs. The lonely retired librarian who rarely left home. The widower eating breakfast alone every morning. The cashier working double shifts while caring for her mother. The volunteer firefighter recovering from surgery. Interesting people. Very ordinary people. People nobody noticed. Until the dogs did. Boom. There it is. Interesting dogs. Very observant dogs. The shepherds never behaved randomly. That was the strange part. Interesting behavior. Very deliberate behavior. They always approached the same type of person. The ones carrying something invisible. Grief. Loneliness. Fear. Exhaustion. Interesting burdens. Very human burdens. And somehow Ranger and Echo always knew. Interesting dogs. Very mysterious dogs. Cedar Hollow started noticing. Then talking. Then changing. Interesting town. Very different town. People began gathering more often. Checking on neighbors. Helping strangers. Volunteering. Interesting community. Very healthy community. Mayor Walter Briggs noticed too. Of course he did. Interesting mayor. Very observant mayor. One afternoon he cornered Mason outside the post office. Interesting mayor. Very direct mayor. Those dogs are causing trouble. Interesting accusation. Very misleading accusation. Mason frowned. What kind? The mayor smiled. Interesting smile. Very happy smile. The good kind. Boom. There it is. Interesting town. Very hopeful town. Then came Claire Morgan. Again. Interesting woman. Very important woman. The rehabilitation center still struggled. Funding remained uncertain. Construction remained unfinished. But something was changing there too. Interesting project. Very stubborn project. Volunteers increased. Donations increased. Community interest increased. Interesting growth. Very unexpected growth. One afternoon Mason stopped by the warehouse. Echo immediately headed toward Claire. Good dog. Very predictable dog. The woman laughed. Interesting woman. Very familiar woman now. He's becoming my supervisor. Correct. Very correct. The younger shepherd sat beside her desk. Monitoring. Judging. Proving. Interesting dog. Very managerial dog. Claire shook her head. I swear people come here just to see him. Interesting woman. Very amused woman. Does it work? Mason asked. Claire looked around. Interesting room. Very different room. Workers filled every corner. Volunteers painted walls. Electricians installed lighting. Students carried supplies. Interesting building. Very alive building. The woman smiled. It works. Boom. There it is. Interesting dogs. Very effective dogs. For the first time since starting the project, Claire looked hopeful. Not determined. Not stubborn. Hopeful. Different thing entirely. Interesting hope. Very important hope. And somehow Ranger and Echo were standing directly in the middle of it. Again. The call came on a cold Tuesday morning. Interesting morning. Very quiet morning. Mason sat on his porch repairing an old fishing reel while Ranger slept nearby and Echo watched the tree line. Good dogs. Very peaceful dogs. Then his phone rang. Interesting phone. Very unexpected phone. The retired SEAL stared at it suspiciously. Most people who knew him preferred knocking. Interesting veteran. Very old-fashioned veteran. The caller ID displayed, Mayor Walter Briggs. Interesting mayor. Very persistent mayor. Mason answered. What broke? Interesting greeting. Very Mason greeting. The mayor laughed. Interesting mayor. Very predictable mayor. Morning to you too. What broke? The mayor sighed. Interesting sigh. Very mayor sigh. Nobody. Pause. Yet. Bad answer. Very bad answer. Mason immediately sat upright. Interesting veteran. Very alert veteran. The mayor continued. You know Carl Dawson? Boom. There it is. Interesting name. Very important name. The old SEAL frowned. Barely. But enough. Interesting veteran. Very thoughtful veteran. Carl Dawson. Former Army Ranger. Vietnam-era father. Afghanistan-era son. Complicated man. Interesting veteran. Very isolated veteran. Carl lived alone on the northern ridge outside Cedar Hollow. Rarely visited town. Rarely answered calls. Rarely interacted with anyone. Interesting man. Very lonely man. What about him? The mayor hesitated. Interesting hesitation. Very concerning hesitation. He hasn't been seen in 3 weeks. Silence. Interesting silence. Very serious silence. Mason immediately looked toward Ranger. Then Echo. The younger shepherd was already standing. There it is. Interesting dog. Very suspicious dog. Almost like he already knew. Interesting dogs. Very strange dogs. The mayor continued. We've checked his mailbox. No response. Truck hasn't moved. No lights. Bad. Very bad. The old SEAL stood immediately. Interesting veteran. Very decisive veteran. When was the last confirmed sighting? Hardware store. 22 days ago. Interesting timeline. Very concerning timeline. Then Echo barked once. Good dog. Very clear dog. The younger shepherd was already walking toward the truck. Good Lord. Interesting dog. Very certain dog. Mason stared. Then shook his head. Of course. Interesting dogs. Very predictable dogs. Because apparently Ranger and Echo had already chosen their next mission. And somewhere on the northern ridge, a forgotten veteran might be waiting for someone to find him. The road to Carl Dawson's property wound through the northern ridge like a scar across the mountains. Interesting road. Very lonely road. Tall pines crowded both sides. The snow from earlier in the week had melted into thick mud. Clouds hung low over the valley. Interesting weather. Very unsettled weather. Mason Hale drove slowly. Ranger sat in the passenger seat. Echo stood behind him. Alert. Focused. Watching. Good dogs. Very serious dogs. The mayor's concern sat heavily in the truck. 22 days. Interesting number. Very long number. A veteran disappearing for a day wasn't unusual. 3 weeks was different. Very different. Interesting veteran. Very isolated veteran. Eventually the property appeared. Interesting property. Very forgotten property. A small cabin stood near a wooded hillside. The roof needed repairs. The porch leaned slightly. Several windows remained covered from the inside. Interesting cabin. Very defensive cabin. Carl Dawson hadn't simply isolated himself. He'd fortified isolation. Boom. There it is. Interesting man. Very wounded man. Mason parked. The dogs exited immediately. Interesting dogs. Very focused dogs. Echo headed straight toward the cabin. Ranger followed. The old SEAL noticed something immediately. Interesting detail. Very concerning detail. No footprints. No tire tracks. Nothing recent. Bad sign. Very bad sign. Mason climbed the porch. Knocked. Silence. Interesting silence. Very uncomfortable silence. He knocked again. Louder. Still nothing. Then Echo growled softly. Interesting dog. Very alert dog. Not aggression. Concern. Different thing. Interesting growl. Very important growl. Mason tried the door. Unlocked. Good lord. Interesting door. Very dangerous door. The old seal pushed it open slowly. The smell hit immediately. Not death. Thank God. Something else. Interesting smell. Very familiar smell. Neglect. Stale air. Loneliness. Interesting house. Very abandoned house. Carl sat in a chair beside the fireplace. Alive. Barely. Boom. There it is. Interesting veteran. Very broken veteran. The old man looked thinner than Mason remembered. Older. Tired. His beard had grown wild. Several unopened food containers sat nearby. Interesting man. Very defeated man. Carl blinked. Slowly. Then looked up. Recognition came eventually. Interesting veteran. Very distant veteran. Mason? Yeah. Silence. Interesting silence. Very painful silence. Carl stared at the dogs. Then looked away. Interesting reaction. Very telling reaction. Because the old ranger wasn't physically injured. He was emotionally exhausted. Mason recognized it immediately. Interesting veteran. Very experienced veteran. PTSD. Isolation. Depression. The invisible injuries. Interesting wounds. Very real wounds. Then Echo did something unexpected. Again. Interesting dog. Very extraordinary dog. The younger shepherd walked directly across the room. Ignored everyone. Ignored everything. Then rested his head on Carl's knee. Boom. There it is. Interesting dog. Very good dog. The old veteran froze. Completely. Interesting man. Very surprised man. Then his hand slowly moved. Trembling slightly. Resting against Echo's neck. Interesting moment. Very important moment. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. Because sometimes healing started before words arrived. Interesting healing. Very quiet healing. The next few days changed Carl Dawson. Not dramatically. Not instantly. Slowly. Like spring thawing frozen ground. Interesting change. Very real change. Mason visited daily. The dogs came too. Interesting routine. Very necessary routine. At first Carl barely spoke. Interesting veteran. Very guarded veteran. Then he started answering questions. Then asking questions. Then telling stories. Interesting stories. Very old stories. Vietnam. Search missions. Lost friends. Funny mistakes. Terrible decisions. Interesting memories. Very heavy memories. Echo became his shadow. Good dog. Very loyal dog. The younger shepherd followed Carl everywhere. Porch. Kitchen. Woodpile. Everywhere. Interesting dog. Very committed dog. Ranger preferred sitting nearby. Watching. Protecting. Good dog. Very wise dog. Then one afternoon Carl laughed. Actual laughter. Boom. There it is. Interesting sound. Very rare sound. Mason nearly dropped his coffee. Interesting veteran. Very shocked veteran. Carl noticed. Then laughed harder. Interesting man. Very human man. The old ranger pointed toward Echo. That dog steals my socks. Interesting accusation. Very fair accusation. Echo looked completely innocent. Which proved nothing. Interesting dog. Very suspicious dog. The laughter echoed through the cabin. And for the first time in years, the house sounded alive. Interesting house. Very different house. Then the storm arrived. A real storm. Interesting storm. Very dangerous storm. The Weather Service issued warnings across western Montana. Heavy rain. Mountain runoff. Possible flash flooding. Interesting warning. Very serious warning. Most people ignored weather alerts. Mountain towns always did. Until rivers started rising. Interesting towns. Very stubborn towns. Cedar Hollow received rain for 36 straight hours. Roads flooded. Creeks overflowed. Power flickered. Interesting weather. Very bad weather. By the second night, the river running through town had doubled in size. Then tripled. Interesting river. Very dangerous river. Mayor Briggs called an emergency meeting. The community center. The fire department. Volunteers. Everyone. Interesting town. Very united town. Mason attended. The dogs came too. Of course. Interesting dogs. Very involved dogs. Nobody questioned it anymore. Interesting town. Very accepting town. Then the call came. Interesting call. Very bad call. A family remained trapped near the eastern floodplain. Road washed out. Water rising. 2 adults. 1 child. Interesting family. Very dangerous situation. The fire department mobilized immediately. But conditions were worsening. Fast. Interesting flood. Very aggressive flood. Mayor Briggs looked around the room. Then toward Mason. Interesting mayor. Very hopeful mayor. The old seal already knew. Interesting veteran. Very predictable veteran. You need volunteers. The mayor nodded. Boom. There it is. Interesting town. Very urgent town. Mason stood. Then Ranger stood. Then Echo stood. Interesting dogs. Very ready dogs. The entire room watched, because somehow seeing the dogs stand made everyone calmer. Strange. But true. Interesting dogs. Very reassuring dogs. And 30 minutes later they were driving into the storm. The floodwater moved like a living thing. Interesting water. Very dangerous water. Brown. Fast. Relentless. The kind of water that ignored strength. Ignored confidence. Ignored experience. Interesting flood. Very unforgiving flood. Mason stood near the rescue vehicles studying the terrain. The trapped family occupied a small farmhouse beyond a flooded access road. Interesting location. Very bad location. Firefighters prepared ropes. Volunteers organized equipment. Everyone moved quickly. Interesting rescue. Very serious rescue. Then Echo reacted. There it is. Interesting dog. Very important dog. The younger shepherd suddenly turned away from the farmhouse. Interesting. Very unexpected. He stared toward a wooded drainage ditch 200 yards away. Focused. Locked on. Good dog. Very focused dog. Mason noticed immediately. Interesting veteran. Very observant veteran. Echo wasn't distracted. He never got distracted. Interesting dog. Very reliable dog. The shepherd barked once. Then started moving. Good dog. Very certain dog. Mason followed. Ranger followed. Several firefighters followed. Interesting group. Very curious group. The ditch looked empty. First. Interesting ditch. Very deceptive ditch. Then Echo stopped beside a fallen cottonwood tree. Interesting tree. Very important tree. The dog barked again. Louder this time. Good dog. Very clear dog. Everyone searched the area. Nothing. Interesting. Very confusing. Then Ranger joined him. Interesting dog. Very trustworthy dog. The older shepherd began pawing at debris trapped against the tree. Boom. There it is. Interesting dogs. Very smart dogs. Mason rushed forward. Then saw it. A hand. Good Lord. Interesting discovery. Very terrifying discovery. A human hand protruded from flood debris. Half submerged. Barely visible. Interesting person. Very lucky person. The rescue team moved instantly. Within minutes they pulled a man free. Unconscious. Cold. Alive. Interesting man. Very fortunate man. Nobody even knew he was missing. Boom. There it is. Interesting flood. Very dangerous flood. The victim turned out to be a utility worker swept downstream hours earlier. The search area had been miles away. Nobody expected him there. Nobody except Echo. Interesting dog. Very extraordinary dog. Paramedics loaded the man into an ambulance. The rescue captain stared at Echo. Then Ranger. Then Mason. Interesting captain. Very impressed captain. Your dogs just saved a life. Correct. Very correct. The old seal looked down at the shepherds. Echo sat proudly. Ranger looked unimpressed. Again. Interesting dog. Very Ranger behavior. Then the radio crackled. Interesting radio. Very urgent radio. The trapped family still needed help. The flood still threatened homes. The night wasn't over. Not even close. Interesting night. Very long night. But as rescue crews moved back toward the flooded roadway, word spread quickly. Through firefighters. Through volunteers. Through Cedar Hollow. Interesting town. Very fast town. The dogs from the closing shelter had done it again. Not finding treasure. Not solving mysteries. saving people, and standing in the rain beside Ranger and Echo, Mason Hale finally realized something. He thought he had rescued 2 forgotten German shepherds from a closing shelter. But more and more, it looked like they had arrived in Cedar Hollow for a reason. And somehow that reason was becoming bigger than all of them. The floodwaters finally began receding 2 days later. Interesting flood. Very exhausting flood. Cedar Hollow looked tired. Mud-covered roads. Debris-lined riverbanks. Volunteers filled the streets. Chainsaws echoed through neighborhoods. Interesting town. Very resilient town. People helped one another. The old-fashioned way. Neighbors helping neighbors. Interesting community. Very strong community. Mason Hale stood outside the rehabilitation center unloading donated supplies from his truck. Interesting veteran. Very busy veteran. Claire Morgan met him at the entrance. Coffee in hand. Blueprints under one arm. Stress under both eyes. Interesting woman. Very hard-working woman. The center still wasn't finished. But it no longer looked doomed. Interesting building. Very hopeful building. Volunteers worked everywhere. Local businesses donated materials. Retirees donated labor. Students donated weekends. Interesting people. Very good people. And somehow nearly every conversation eventually led back to Ranger and Echo. Interesting dogs. Very famous dogs. The old seal was beginning to suspect the shepherds had become more popular than the mayor. Interesting mayor. Very unfortunate mayor. Then a pickup truck pulled into the lot. Interesting truck. Very unfamiliar truck. Dust-covered. Older model. Out-of-county plates. A man stepped out. Late 60s. Weathered face. Strong posture. Interesting man. Very observant man. The stranger didn't look at Mason. Didn't look at Claire. Didn't look at the building. He looked directly at Ranger. Boom. There it is. Interesting reaction. Very important reaction. Ranger had been lying beside the entrance. Half asleep. Relaxed. The moment he saw the man, everything changed. Interesting dog. Very sudden dog. The old shepherd stood. Slowly. Carefully. Completely focused. Good dog. Very focused dog. The stranger froze. Interesting man. Very emotional man. For several seconds nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Interesting silence. Very powerful silence. Then Ranger took one step forward. Another. Another. Interesting dog. Very deliberate dog. The man's eyes began watering. Good Lord. Interesting man. Very emotional man. Then Ranger reached him. Stopped. Looked up. And gently pressed his head against the stranger's chest. Boom. There it is. Interesting dog. Very beautiful dog. The man closed his eyes. One hand resting on Ranger's neck. Like greeting an old friend. Because that's exactly what he was. Interesting reunion. Very special reunion. The parking lot went silent. Workers stopped. Volunteers stopped. Claire stopped. Even Echo sat quietly nearby. Interesting dogs. Very aware dogs. Then the stranger finally spoke. Voice rough. Voice shaking. Interesting voice. Very emotional voice. I'll be damned. A small laugh escaped him. Then another. Interesting man. Very overwhelmed man. I found you. Boom. There it is. Interesting mystery. Very important mystery. Mason approached carefully. Interesting veteran. Very curious veteran. You know him? The stranger nodded slowly. Interesting man. Very certain man. Yeah. Pause. Then. I trained him. Good Lord. Interesting revelation. Very important revelation. The man's name was Daniel Pierce. Interesting name. Very important name. Former wilderness search and rescue handler. Retired. Living nearly 200 miles away. Interesting man. Very determined man. The entire story emerged over coffee inside the rehabilitation center. Interesting story. Very revealing story. Years earlier, Ranger served as one of the most successful search and rescue dogs in the region. Lost hikers. Missing children. Avalanche victims. Disaster zones. Interesting dog. Very remarkable dog. The old shepherd saved dozens of lives. Maybe more. Nobody knew the exact number. Interesting dog. Very humble dog. Daniel carried photographs, certificates, newspaper clippings. Interesting evidence. Very impressive evidence. Picture after picture showed a younger ranger. Leaping over fallen trees. Searching mountain trails. Standing beside rescue helicopters. Working. Always working. Good dog. Very good dog. Claire stared. Mason stared. Everyone stared. Interesting dog. Very accomplished dog. Then Daniel reached the final photograph. Interesting photograph. Very important photograph. The image showed Ranger lying beside a teenage girl wrapped in blankets. Snow everywhere. Rescue personnel surrounding them. Interesting scene. Very emotional scene. Daniel smiled softly. That girl survived 3 nights in a blizzard. Boom. There it is. Interesting rescue. Very incredible rescue. Nobody could find her. He looked down at Ranger. Then smiled. Interesting man. Very proud man. Accept him. Good dog. Very good dog. The old shepherd rested calmly at Daniel's feet. Not seeking praise. Not seeking attention. Just listening. Interesting dog. Very Ranger. Then Daniel's expression changed. Interesting man. Very sad man. Because every great story eventually reaches the hard part. Interesting stories. Very painful stories. He retired at 8. Silence. Interesting silence. Very familiar silence. Daniel looked toward the window. Interesting man. Very reflective man. My wife got sick. There it is. Interesting life. Very difficult life. Cancer. Treatment. Hospital visits. Expenses. The usual nightmare. Interesting illness. Very cruel illness. Daniel's voice lowered. Interesting voice. Very heavy voice. I couldn't care for him properly anymore. Good Lord. Interesting confession. Very painful confession. The old handler looked directly at Ranger. Tears threatening. Interesting man. Very honest man. So I found a family. Pause. They promised me he'd be loved. Interesting promise. Very dangerous promise. Daniel shook his head. Interesting man. Very disappointed man. They lied. Boom. There it is. Interesting people. Very bad people. Months later, the family surrendered Ranger. Then Ranger ended up at the shelter. Forgotten. Abandoned. Waiting. Interesting dog. Very unfair fate. Daniel only discovered the truth recently. Interesting man. Very determined man. Then he spent weeks tracking Ranger's location. Following rumors. Following shelter records. Following stories about 2 German shepherds helping an entire town. Interesting town. Very talkative town. Eventually every trail led to Cedar Hollow. Interesting journey. Very worthwhile journey. Then Daniel looked toward Mason. Interesting man. Very grateful man. You saved him. The old SEAL shook his head. Interesting veteran. Very honest veteran. No. He glanced toward Ranger. Then smiled slightly. Interesting veteran. Very correct veteran. He saved all of us. Boom. There it is. Interesting dog. Very extraordinary dog. Spring arrived early. Interesting spring. Very welcome spring. Snow disappeared from the valley. The river returned to normal. Wildflowers appeared beside country roads. Life moved forward. Interesting season. Very hopeful season. And somehow the rehabilitation center was still alive. Interesting center. Very stubborn center. By every reasonable calculation, the project should have failed months ago. Funding shortages. Construction delays. Volunteer shortages. Economic uncertainty. Interesting problems. Very serious problems. Yet somehow the building kept growing. Room by room. Wall by wall. Interesting progress. Very impressive progress. Claire Morgan noticed it every day. Interesting woman. Very grateful woman. The center wasn't surviving because of money. It wasn't surviving because of government support. It wasn't surviving because of luck. Interesting truth. Very simple truth. It was surviving because people cared. Boom. There it is. Interesting people. Very good people. The problem? People rarely cared before. Interesting town. Very changed town. One afternoon Claire sat inside her future office reviewing financial reports. Interesting office. Very unfinished office. Then she frowned. Interesting woman. Very confused woman. The numbers didn't make sense. Not in a bad way. In a good way. Interesting numbers. Very surprising numbers. New donations. New volunteers. New commitments. Every week. Without fail. Interesting growth. Very healthy growth. Then she realized something. Interesting realization. Very important realization. Nearly every new volunteer shared the same story. Interesting pattern. Very familiar pattern. They met Mason. Or Tommy. Or Carl. Or Mayor Briggs. Or somebody connected through Ranger and Echo. Boom. There it is. Interesting dogs. Very influential dogs. The realization made her laugh. Interesting woman. Very amused woman. Because somehow 2 German Shepherds had accidentally created the strongest community outreach program in Cedar Hollow. Interesting dogs. Very effective dogs. Meanwhile, Mason remained completely unaware of his role. Interesting veteran. Very typical veteran. He spent most mornings repairing fences. Helping Carl. Driving Tommy to baseball practice. Interesting routine. Very different routine. The old SEAL had more friends now than he'd had in 10 years. Though he'd never admit it. Interesting veteran. Very stubborn veteran. Then came the town meeting. Interesting meeting. Very important meeting. Mayor Briggs organized it inside the high school gymnasium. Hundreds attended. More than anyone expected. Interesting crowd. Very large crowd. Claire stood near the front. Nervous. Interesting woman. Very nervous woman. The future of the rehabilitation center would be decided that night. Funding. Support. Final approvals. Everything. Interesting decision. Very important decision. The mayor stepped to the microphone. Interesting mayor. Very emotional mayor. He spoke about Cedar Hollow. The struggles. His future. His people. Interesting speech. Very good speech. Then he invited Claire forward. Interesting moment. Very important moment. The woman walked to the podium. Hands trembling slightly. Interesting woman. Very brave woman. She explained the project. The mission. The purpose. Who it would help. Why it mattered. Interesting vision. Very inspiring vision. When she finished, silence filled the gym. Interesting silence. Very dangerous silence. Then something happened. Interesting moment. Very unexpected moment. Carl Dawson stood first. Boom. There it is. Interesting veteran. Very important veteran. The same man who hadn't left his cabin in years. The same man who almost disappeared from the world. Interesting man. Very changed man. Carl looked around the gym. Then spoke. Interesting voice. Very powerful voice. This town saved me. Silence. Interesting silence. Very emotional silence. The old ranger continued. And this center is going save people like me. Boom. There it is. Interesting truth. Very important truth. Then Tommy stood. Then another volunteer. Then another. Then another. One by one. People sharing stories. People sharing hope. People sharing reasons. Interesting people. Very inspiring people. By the end of the night, the vote wasn't even close. The rehabilitation center would continue. Funding approved. Community support secured. Future protected. Interesting center. Very successful center. Outside the gym afterward, Claire found Mason standing beside Ranger and Echo. Good dogs. Very important dogs. The woman looked at the shepherds. Then laughed. Interesting woman. Very happy woman. You realize none of this happens without them? Mason looked down at the dogs. Interesting veteran. Very thoughtful veteran. Echo sat proudly. Ranger looked mildly annoyed by the attention. Typical Ranger. Interesting dog. Very Ranger. Then the old SEAL smiled. Small smile. Real smile. And for the first time he admitted something. Interesting veteran. Very honest veteran. Yeah. He scratched behind Ranger's ears. Then echoes. Good dogs. Very good dogs. I think I'm finally starting to figure that out. And standing beneath the gymnasium lights, surrounded by people whose lives had become connected in ways nobody could have predicted, Mason realized something extraordinary. He rescued 2 German shepherds from a closing shelter. But the dogs? The dogs were rebuilding an entire town. Summer arrived in Cedar Hollow like a reward. Interesting summer. Very deserved summer. The mountains turned deep green. Wildflowers covered the meadows. The river sparkled beneath endless blue skies. For the first time in years, the town felt alive. Not surviving. Living. Interesting town. Very different town. Mayor Walter Briggs stood in the middle of Main Street staring at organized chaos. Tables. Tents. Food trucks. Music equipment. Children running everywhere. Interesting scene. Very successful scene. The mayor smiled. Because 6 months ago this festival almost didn't happen. Funding problems. Volunteer shortages. Lack of interest. The usual problems. Interesting problems. Very old problems. Then somehow everything changed. Interesting change. Very unusual change. And now Cedar Hollow's Community Renewal Festival stretched across 3 entire blocks. Interesting festival. Very important festival. The goal was simple. Celebrate the rehabilitation center. Celebrate local businesses. Celebrate community. Celebrate second chances. Interesting theme. Very fitting theme. Mason Hale hated every second of it. Interesting veteran. Very predictable veteran. Not because he disliked the festival. Because people kept talking to him. Interesting problem. Very terrible problem. The retired SEAL stood beside a lemonade stand while Ranger rested beneath the shade of a tree. Echo wandered between groups of children collecting attention like taxes. Interesting dog. Very popular dog. The younger shepherd had become a celebrity. No other explanation existed. Interesting dog. Very famous dog. Tommy Reed sprinted across the park carrying a baseball glove. Interesting boy. Very different boy. The lonely child Mason met at the bus stop barely resembled the person running toward him now. More confident. More social. More alive. Interesting transformation. Very beautiful transformation. The boy grinned. Mason! The old SEAL braced himself. Interesting veteran. Very experienced veteran. Because Tommy only approached with that expression when trouble followed. Interesting boy. Very creative boy. What happened? Tommy looked offended. Interesting child. Very dramatic child. Nothing happened. Pause. Then, I volunteered you. Boom. There it is. Interesting child. Very dangerous child. Mason closed his eyes. Interesting veteran. Very tired veteran. For what? Tommy pointed toward the festival stage. Interesting stage. Very suspicious stage. The speech. Good Lord. Interesting speech. Very bad speech. No. Correct answer. Very correct answer. Tommy smiled. Interesting child. Very confident child. Too late. Bad. Very bad. The old SEAL looked toward Mayor Briggs. The mayor immediately looked away. Guilty. Interesting mayor. Very guilty mayor. Conspiracy confirmed. Interesting town. Very sneaky town. Throughout the afternoon, the festival grew larger. Interesting festival. Very successful festival. Families arrived from neighboring communities. Veterans gathered near the memorial display. Children played games. Local musicians performed. Interesting atmosphere. Very joyful atmosphere. And everywhere people went, Ranger and Echo appeared. Interesting dogs. Very busy dogs. The shepherds moved through the festival like unofficial ambassadors. Good dogs. Very good ambassadors. Echo played with children. Accepted treats. Posed for photographs. Enjoyed every second. Interesting dog. Very social dog. Ranger preferred older company. Interesting dog. Very Ranger dog. The elderly. Veterans. Widows. People sitting quietly beneath shade trees. Those were his people. Interesting dog. Very wise dog. Mason watched the older shepherd approach an elderly man sitting alone near the river. Interesting man. Very lonely man. The stranger smiled. Then began talking. Not to Mason. Not to anyone else. To Ranger. Interesting conversation. Very human conversation. The old SEAL noticed something. Interesting observation. Very important observation. People told Ranger things. Secrets. Memories. Stories. The shepherd listened. Never judged. Never interrupted. Interesting dog. Very extraordinary dog. Perhaps that was why people trusted him. Interesting trust. Very powerful trust. Then Claire Morgan appeared. Interesting woman. Very happy woman. The rehabilitation center director looked healthier now. Less exhausted. More hopeful. Interesting woman. Very changed woman. The center officially opened next month. Construction nearly finished. Staff hired. Programs scheduled. Interesting center. Very successful center. Claire stood beside Mason, watching the crowd. Interesting woman. Very reflective woman. Look at this. The old seal looked around. Interesting crowd. Very large crowd. What? Claire laughed. Interesting woman. Very amused woman. All of this. She pointed toward Main Street. Interesting gesture. Very meaningful gesture. Nobody thought this town could do something like this anymore. Boom. There it is. Interesting town. Very resilient town. The old seal studied the crowd. Interesting veteran. Very thoughtful veteran. She was right. Something changed. Not because one person fixed everything. Because people started believing again. Interesting belief. Very important belief. Then Claire smiled. Interesting woman. Very emotional woman. And somehow it started with 2 dogs. Correct. Very correct. That evening, Mayor Briggs finally dragged Mason onto the stage. Interesting mayor. Very annoying mayor. Hundreds of people filled the park. The setting sun painted the mountains gold. Interesting sunset. Very beautiful sunset. Mason hated public speaking. Always had. Interesting veteran. Very uncomfortable veteran. The mayor handed him the microphone. Then escaped immediately. Coward. Interesting mayor. Very smart mayor. The crowd laughed. Interesting crowd. Very supportive crowd. Mason stared at the microphone. Then at the people. Then at Ranger and Echo sitting near the stage. Interesting dogs. Very loyal dogs. Silence stretched. Interesting silence. Very Mason silence. Eventually he spoke. Simple. Direct. Honest. Interesting speech. Very Mason speech. I'm not really a speech person. Laughter. Interesting crowd. Very understanding crowd. The old seal nodded toward Ranger. Then Echo. Interesting dogs. Very important dogs. Most of you think I rescued these 2. Silence. Interesting silence. Very meaningful silence. Mason smiled slightly, then shook his head. Interesting veteran. Very honest veteran. That's not how it happened. Boom. There it is. Interesting truth. Very important truth. The crowd listened. Completely silent. Interesting crowd. Very attentive crowd. The old seal looked around Cedar Hollow. Interesting town. Very loved town. Then continued. These dogs found people. Tommy, Claire, Carl, the elderly widow, the flood victims, the volunteers, everyone. Interesting people. Very important people. Mason pointed toward the crowd. Interesting gesture. Very emotional gesture. They reminded us to notice each other. Silence. Interesting silence. Very powerful silence. Then he smiled. Real smile. Rare smile. Interesting veteran. Very healed veteran. And I think that's what saved this town. The crowd erupted. Applause. Cheers. Emotion. Interesting festival. Very successful festival. And beside the stage, Ranger simply yawned. Good dog. Very Ranger response. The first sign appeared 3 weeks later. Interesting sign. Very small sign. Easy to miss. Most people would have. Mason didn't. Interesting veteran. Very observant veteran. Ranger climbed onto the porch more slowly. That's all. Nothing dramatic. Nothing alarming. Just slower. Interesting dog. Very subtle dog. The old seal noticed immediately. Age. Interesting age. Very unfair age. The shepherd turned 9 shortly afterward. Old for a working dog. Especially one with Ranger's history. Interesting dog. Very accomplished dog. Search and rescue missions. Mountain operations. Years of hard work. Interesting life. Very full life. The miles were beginning to show. Summer faded into autumn. The leaves changed. The air cooled. The mountains prepared for winter. Interesting season. Very beautiful season. Ranger changed too. Slowly. Quietly. The older shepherd slept more. Walked less. Rested longer. Interesting dog. Very tired dog. Echo noticed first. Interesting dog. Very loyal dog. The younger shepherd stopped racing ahead during walks. Stopped sprinting through fields. Stopped demanding games. Interesting behavior. Very touching behavior. Instead, he matched Ranger's pace. Always. Interesting dogs. Very strong bond. Side by side. As they always had. Good dogs. Very good dogs. One evening Mason sat on the porch watching sunset. Interesting porch. Very peaceful porch. Ranger rested beside his chair. Echo nearby. The valley glowed orange beneath fading sunlight. Interesting evening. Very beautiful evening. Then Ranger struggled slightly while standing. There it is. Interesting moment. Very painful moment. Small. Brief. Enough. The old seal felt his chest tighten. Interesting veteran. Very worried veteran. Because now there was no pretending. No denial. No avoidance. Interesting reality. Very difficult reality. Time was catching up. The veterinarian confirmed it. Interesting veterinarian. Very gentle veterinarian. Arthritis. Joint deterioration. Age-related complications. Nothing unexpected. Interesting diagnosis. Very inevitable diagnosis. The doctor remained optimistic. Comfort. Medication. Good days ahead. Interesting plan. Very reasonable plan. Yet Mason heard something else. Interesting veteran. Very human veteran. The clock. Not today. Not tomorrow. Eventually. Interesting future. Very painful future. Word spread through Cedar Hollow. Interesting town. Very loving town. People visited Ranger constantly. The retired librarian. Tommy. Claire. Mayor Briggs. Carl Dawson. Dozens more. Interesting visitors. Very grateful visitors. Everyone wanted time. Everyone wanted one more walk. One more photograph. One more memory. Interesting dog. Very loved dog. Ranger accepted the attention calmly. As always, good dog. Very good dog. One afternoon Tommy sat beside him beneath the oak tree. Interesting boy. Very emotional boy. The child scratched behind Ranger's ears. Then looked toward Mason. Interesting question. Very difficult question. Is he dying? Silence. Interesting silence. Very painful silence. Children deserved honesty. Interesting truth. Very important truth. The old seal nodded slowly. Not today. Not immediately. But someday. Interesting answer. Very honest answer. Tommy lowered his head. Interesting child. Very sad child. Then Ranger lifted one paw and placed it gently on the boy's knee. Boom. There it is. Interesting dog. Very perfect dog. Tommy laughed through tears. Interesting laugh. Very brave laugh. The old seal looked away briefly. Because some moments deserved privacy. Even now. Especially now. Interesting friendship. Very beautiful friendship. And as autumn deepened across Cedar Hollow, everyone quietly understood something. The dog who helped rebuild the town was entering the final chapter of his own story. Good dog. Very good dog. The best dog. Winter arrived gently that year. Interesting winter. Very kind winter. Snow settled across Cedar Hollow in soft layers instead of violent storms. The mountains wore white crowns. The river slowed. Smoke drifted from chimneys throughout town. Interesting town. Very peaceful town. Mason Hale stood on the porch of his house watching snowflakes drift through the morning air. Ranger rested beside him. Good dog. Very old dog now. The shepherd's muzzle had turned almost completely gray. His movements were slower. His naps were longer. His eyes remained exactly the same. Wise, steady, kind, interesting dog. Very remarkable dog. Echo sat nearby. Always nearby. Interesting dog. Very loyal dog. The younger shepherd rarely left Ranger's side anymore. Like he understood. Like he knew. Interesting dogs. Very special dogs. Mason reached down and scratched behind Ranger's ears. The older shepherd closed his eyes. Good dog. Very happy dog. Then a pickup truck appeared in the driveway. Interesting truck. Very familiar truck. Tommy Reed jumped out before the vehicle fully stopped. Interesting boy. Very excited boy. 13, he looked different now. Taller. Stronger. More confident. Interesting growth. Very healthy growth. The shy child from the bus stop seemed like somebody else entirely. Tommy ran toward the porch. Ranger immediately lifted his head. Good dog. Very happy dog. Morning, Ranger. The shepherd's tail moved slowly. Interesting dog. Very affectionate dog. Mason smiled. Interesting veteran. Very content veteran. Tommy carried something under his arm. A large scrapbook. Interesting book. Very important book. The boy sat beside Ranger, then carefully opened it. Interesting boy. Very thoughtful boy. Inside were photographs. Hundreds of them. Interesting photographs. Very meaningful photographs. The flood rescue. The festival. The rehabilitation center. Carl Dawson smiling. Claire Morgan standing beside volunteers. Children playing with Echo. Ranger everywhere. Good dog. Very famous dog. Tommy turned pages slowly. Interesting child. Very emotional child. Then stopped near the middle. Interesting page. Very important page. A photograph from the day Mason first found Tommy at the bus stop. Boom. There it is. Interesting photograph. Very powerful photograph. The boy stared at it. Then smiled. Interesting smile. Very mature smile. I almost didn't go to school that day. Silence. Interesting silence. Very revealing silence. Mason looked over. Interesting veteran. Very attentive veteran. Tommy shrugged. Interesting boy. Very honest boy. I didn't really care about anything back then. Boom. There it is. Interesting truth. Very painful truth. The old seal understood immediately. Grief. Loneliness. Loss. Interesting emotions. Very heavy emotions. Tommy looked toward Ranger. Then Echo. Interesting dogs. Very important dogs. They changed everything. Correct. Very correct. The boy wasn't talking about himself. Not entirely. Interesting realization. Very important realization. He was talking about all of Cedar Hollow. The realization became impossible to ignore. Interesting realization. Very powerful realization. Over the next several weeks, Mason began noticing evidence everywhere. The rehabilitation center officially opened. Interesting center. Very successful center. Claire Morgan now employed therapists, counselors, veteran support specialists, physical rehabilitation staff. Interesting staff. Very necessary staff. People traveled from neighboring counties for treatment. The building that should have failed became one of the town's greatest successes. Boom. There it is. Interesting center. Very important center. Then there was Carl Dawson. Interesting veteran. Very changed veteran. The isolated former ranger now volunteered twice a week. He spoke at veteran support meetings, helped struggling service members, even attended community dinners. Interesting man. Very different man. Nobody would have believed it a year ago. Interesting transformation. Very remarkable transformation. Then there was Tommy. Interesting boy. Very special boy. Grades improved. Confidence improved. Life improved. The child who once sat alone at a bus stop now had friends everywhere. Interesting growth. Very beautiful growth. Even Mayor Briggs changed. Interesting mayor. Very emotional mayor. The old mayor admitted one evening over coffee. I was getting ready to retire. Boom. There it is. Interesting confession. Very surprising confession. Mason blinked. Interesting veteran. Very curious veteran. What changed? The mayor laughed. Interesting mayor. Very happy mayor. This town started believing again. Interesting answer. Very correct answer. The mayor looked toward Ranger sleeping near the diner entrance. Interesting dog. Very influential dog. And honestly? Pause. Interesting pause. Very meaningful pause. I think he deserves some credit. Correct. Very correct. One snowy evening, Claire organized a small gathering at the rehabilitation center. Interesting gathering. Very special gathering. Not a fundraiser. Not an event. Something simpler. Thank you. Interesting idea. Very good idea. Dozens of people attended. Veterans, families, teachers, firefighters, volunteers. Interesting crowd. Very grateful crowd. Mason stood near the back wall. Exactly where he preferred. Interesting veteran. Very predictable veteran. Then Claire stepped forward. Interesting woman. Very emotional woman. She carried a framed photograph. Interesting photograph. Very important photograph. The image showed Ranger and Echo sitting together in front of the completed rehabilitation center. Beautiful picture. Perfect picture. Interesting dogs. Very photogenic dogs. Claire smiled, then looked toward Ranger. Interesting woman. Very grateful woman. This center exists because people decided to care. Silence. Interesting silence. Very emotional silence. Then she pointed toward the photograph. Interesting gesture. Very important gesture. And I think these two reminded us how. Boom. There it is. Interesting dogs. Very extraordinary dogs. The room erupted into applause. People stood. People cheered. People cried. Interesting crowd. Very emotional crowd. Ranger opened one eye, looked around, then went back to sleep. Good dog. Very Ranger response. The room laughed, and somehow that made the moment even better. Spring returned to Cedar Hollow one final time. Interesting spring. Very beautiful spring. The snow melted. The river brightened. The mountains awakened. Life continued. As life always does. Interesting life. Very stubborn life. Ranger spent more time resting now. Interesting dog. Very tired dog. His walks became shorter. His naps became longer. His pace became slower. But his happiness remained unchanged. Good dog. Very good dog. Every morning he sat on the porch. Every afternoon he watched the valley. Every evening he rested beside Mason and Echo. Interesting routine. Very peaceful routine. One warm April morning, Ranger didn't come to the door when Mason picked up the leash. Interesting morning. Very important morning. The old seal looked down. Ranger remained lying comfortably beneath the oak tree. Interesting dog. Very calm dog. Not struggling. Not frightened. Simply resting. Good dog. Very peaceful dog. Echo sat beside him. Interesting dog. Very loyal dog. The younger shepherd hadn't moved all morning. Not once. Interesting bond. Very beautiful bond. Mason walked over slowly. Interesting veteran. Very emotional veteran. Ranger lifted his head. Tail moving gently. Good dog. Very happy dog. The old seal sat beside him. Then scratched behind his ears. Interesting man. Very grateful man. For several minutes they simply sat together. No words. No sadness. No fear. Interesting silence. Very sacred silence. Then Mason smiled. Small smile. Real smile. Interesting veteran. Very healed veteran. You did good. Boom. There it is. Interesting words. Very important words. The old shepherd's eyes remained on him. Steady. Peaceful. Content. Good dog. Very good dog. The best dog. That evening, as sunset painted the mountains gold, Ranger quietly passed away beneath the oak tree. No pain. No fear. No struggle. Just peace. Interesting ending. Very beautiful ending. Echo remained beside him. Mason remained beside him. The valley remained silent. Interesting valley. Very respectful valley. The next week, the entire town gathered. Not because anyone organized it. Because they wanted to. Interesting town. Very loving town. Hundreds came. Veterans. Children. Families. Volunteers. Everyone. Interesting crowd. Very grateful crowd. A memorial stone was placed beneath the oak tree. Simple. Beautiful. Perfect. Interesting memorial. Very fitting memorial. The inscription read, Ranger. Searcher of the lost. Friend of the forgotten. Good dog. Boom. There it is. Interesting stone. Very meaningful stone. Months later, life continued. The rehabilitation center flourished. Tommy thrived. Carl volunteered. Claire expanded programs. Mayor Briggs postponed retirement. Interesting town. Very healthy town. And Echo? Good dog. Very good dog. The younger shepherd remained with Mason. Always. Just as loyal. Just as devoted. Every evening they sat together on the porch overlooking Cedar Hollow. Interesting porch. Very peaceful porch. One evening Mason looked across the town. The center. The park. The river. The people. Everything. Interesting view. Very beautiful view. Then he remembered the closing shelter. The flickering lights. The empty kennels. The sign on the wall. Closing today. Interesting memory. Very important memory. He thought he rescued 2 forgotten German shepherds from a shelter nobody could save. But looking across Cedar Hollow now, he finally understood the truth. They rescued him first, and through him they rescued everyone else. Good dogs. Very good dogs. The best dogs.